Let's see if you can comment.
Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. And
Hey,
welcome
hey,
welcome to another episode of Talk Forum. I'm your host tonight, Shauna Whittingham.
I'm Sean Spalding.
Kim Bancroft, hello, good evening.
And we actually are expecting a guest tonight. So just a bit of a backstory. We did, about a month ago, guys, we did a session or an episode on reparations. And we had or have one of our viewers who has an opposing point of view. So he left us a comment on our YouTube, which is a reminder here. We welcome all your comments, your feedback. You can leave us comments on our Talk Forum page on Instagram, as well as, hi Mike, as well as Facebook, as well as YouTube. So anyway, Mike left us a comment, and you just turned yourself sideways, Mike.
Yeah.
And I was sending you help.
Anyway, Mike left us a comment, and so we thought it would be a good idea to invite Mike to the discussion and share his point of view, because we're always open to, especially if you have an opposing point of view, we kind of want to listen and to learn and basically have some dialogue. So before we jump into it, let's just check to make sure Mike can hear us and that we can hear him. So can you check your mic, Mike?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you might want to turn your volume up just a bit.
Okay. How's that?
There we go. So Mike and I know each other from a previous life. And so I want to take this opportunity to welcome Mike Shunk and introduce him to Kimberly Bancroft.
Hello.
And Sean Spalding.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, Mike. I see the awards. I see the awards up there. You showing off on us? Over the top.
Yeah, the awards on top of your credenza.
The trophies.
Trophies. The other way. The other way.
Baseball days.
Oh, that one. That's my son.
Oh, okay. All right.
He was gonna throw it out, but it was his very first golf tournament when Dad took him out there, and he won the thing.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Well, let me second what Shauna said. Thank you for jumping on. I want you to take it easy with us. I'm joking. I want you to speak freely and really share your views. I really as Shauna said, we really appreciate opposing views. So we can always learn.
Yeah, I kind of prefer instead of opposing, different perspective.
Right. Nice.
Before I hope this doesn't throw you guys off, but Mike, I think we need you to turn your mic up a little bit louder, because what's happening is we sound extra loud.
Okay, how's that? I'm as loud as I can go.
Okay, that's actually better.
So the last show, the last show that
I was just going to say, I wish I was able to enter the broadcast with my laptop. I don't know what's going. Oh, maybe I can now. Let's do it. Oh, perfect. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is.
See, people, this is the
Is he in
beauty
the lobby now from the laptop, Shauna?
This is the beauty of live broadcasting. We get all this cute stuff. That's nice.
Okay, well, let's not delay the program just because of technical difficulties.
Are you good now?
I think so.
Okay. The volume is still a little low, but I think we can work with it, huh?
Yeah, I don't know why it says. Anyways, I can hear you. You can hear me.
So let's jump into it then, right? So the last show on reparations, we had a discussion on what was involved in reparations, how people view reparations, some opposing views, not necessarily that we held, but that the opposition that's out there in the ether, opposing financial reparations or any version of reparations. So we wanted to do a this follow up show to really address some of those issues. And because of the relationship that you and Sean have, Mike, thought it was a good idea because you had a voice. There are certain things that you were looking at from a different perspective. So we want to bring you on, and so we can have a conversation going over the whole topic of reparations. And from my personal point of view, the show to me, this particular show, I hope we can dispel with the notion that confronting the dehumanizing apartheid history of this country is an affront to being a proud American. I think that's taken sometimes by people as if we're pushing or trying to make the case for reparations, that we're not being as patriotic as some would like us to be. It's my feeling that it's to not do so would be an affront to decency. It would be an affront to the to actually being an American, because America has a singular charge, right? And that singular charge is to be a refuge for free-minded individuals, right? So I think that part and parcel to being a citizen, being an American, is addressing this and confronting it and finding some way to levy reparations. But I'll let one chime in and what their views are.
I actually just wanted to start with a question, or the question for you, Mike. You watched the episode, and you were kind enough to leave us some feedback. So maybe we could start there, as far as what you agreed with or didn't, or mainly what you didn't agree with. I know you'd mentioned to me in a discussion we had after the show that we had brought some points to the discussion that you hadn't thought of before, but I think you still had very much your point of view about reparations. So I kind of just wanted to give you the floor and hear your point of view.
Okay, I guess that one of the things that I heard, and that Shauna, you and I kind of bantered back and forth with our text exchanges.
Are you able to turn your volume up anymore?
I'm as high as I can go.
It's weird. It was high. It was louder earlier. Okay, we'll work with it.
I'll bring it closer to me.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Well, the phone's at kind of a funny angle, and I've got a.
You're good. You're good. We can hear you. Go ahead.
The premise that I disagree with is that America is systemically racist. And I was trying to think about the best example that I could give you. And look, we all agree that slavery was an awful thing. It's been a stain on the country. But I also believe that over the years that that we have overcome racism. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, but I'm saying for the most part, we are not a systemic racist country. And I think that the best example that I can give you is look at the number of interracial marriages and relationships. It's hard to go down the street today and not see some kind of interracial relationship. So if we were as racist as what is being portrayed, I don't think that these relationships would be anywhere near what they are today. For example, Shauna, if you and I go to lunch as representatives, we're interracially mixing. It's just part of what we do. Nobody gives it a second thought. So that's
No,
go ahead.
no, I guess I'm struggling to make the connection between interracial relationships and systemic racism. So that was outlawed until not too long ago. So I agree we've made progress. And when there were laws enacted to enable interracial relationships, and I agree for the most part, society has progressed in large parts in a lot of the country. Interracial relationships is a good example of that, but I don't think it addresses the underlying. When we say systemic racism, when you look at the policing practices, when you look at what still happens in the financial institutions around business loans and things like that, while there's been progress made, I don't think that the fact that interracial relationships are no longer illegal, it then somehow says, well, all these other pillars of our government and society are okay. Because I don't think we can turn a blind eye to the fact that the criminal justice system in this country is systemic racism. It's founded as such. Privatized prisons. I mean, we, with our tax dollars, are paying a ton of money to these private corporations. And these corporations are coming back to our local governments and saying, you have to maintain a certain amount of people.
Kimberly, hold on.
You have to pay us a certain amount of money. And therefore, our governments that are supposed to protect us are actually over policing to fulfill these contracts. So I don't think that because one area of society has progressed, that it wipes out all of the other areas that are still fundamentally rooted in systemic racism.
I guess we need to dial it back and make sure we understand what you perceive as systemic racism. I'm thinking we might have different understanding of that term.
Well, yeah, Kimberly hit. Well, Kimberly hit on a number of things there, and
we lost. Hopefully he can try to join in. Shauna, I don't know if you want to call him because you've got his number. Maybe he can try to join in through his laptop again, because I think that'll give him a better connection. I think what he was, well, I don't want to speak for him, but
You should be able to join back in.
yeah.
There he is.
all right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, and you sound so much better.
I don't know what happened.
It's all right. You're here now.
Okay, well, Kimberly,
Shauna, you were going to say
hit on a number of
something?
things, and I can't. Okay, I'm back. Kimberly hit on a number of things, and I wanted to go through, just one of them. I mean, there's several that I could, but the last one was about private prisons. Well, what the heck does that have to do, whether the prison is private or not, with systemic racism? That's got nothing to do with it. To me, who cares? Who cares whether it's a government-run prison or a private prison?
I do.
That's
Profit.
irrelevant.
Profits matter. When you are driven to make a profit versus a governmental run agency, you are motivated to have a bigger population, charge more money, and I care where my tax dollars go. I will tell you, I'm a Democrat. I'm for social programs. I'm for welfare. What I am not for is corporate welfare, and I'm not for my tax dollars going and making people billionaires for over criminalizing the U.S. population. I personally don't want my money spent that way. Government-run agencies are not for-profit agencies. Big difference, a major difference. But I think to Shauna's question, maybe I'm not understanding what you think systemic racism is, because I think there's a lot of pillars to society and government, and I think that not all exhibit racism or racist tendencies, but some do. So I guess maybe I'd like to, to Shauna's question, maybe we need to understand better what you're thinking, systemic racism means.
It's the underlying tone of the society.
I would view that as culture.
That's how you view systemic. So your view of systemic racism is an intangible then. So and you're basing that on the feeling of the populace. Is that it, Mike?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble picking some of this up.
No, you're okay.
I don't know why I can't get this on my computer, but anyways, if a private sector can do something more efficiently, shouldn't the private sector be charged with doing it?
Are they doing it more efficiently? Is this more efficient? Trillions of dollars of our tax money housing people for years over pot? Is that efficient? I don't think so. But I now that you have some connection, I think we just to kind of, I think maybe to start the conversation around systemic racism, I just want to go back to what you were saying, which I'm viewing more as a culture, as a society. I think more people are not racist than are, but I'm viewing that as a cultural progress versus the systems and the laws that are in place. So do you kind of see the difference there, or do you not agree that there's a difference?
I guess that I kind of see where you're coming from, but I really don't see a big difference, because if the laws are there, that tells me that it's not systemic.
Well, let me chime in here really.
Yeah.
So, not all laws are created the same, right? And just because something is law does not necessarily mean it's judicious, or does not necessarily mean it's right. So if I could, I can paint a picture of this, the food chain here. So if you have a privatized prison, then and there's a profit motive, then whatever that entity is, that private entity is that owns that private prison, can undertake lobbying measures to lobby lawmakers within that state or within government to criminalize things that were not criminalized before, or to promote enforcement of certain infractions or whatnot that will increase the population within their prisons, that will just add to their bottom line. So that's how that can work against really protecting society, but just working towards increasing a private party's bottom line. So there's a stark difference between seeking profit versus seeking a more just society. But that is part and parcel of why we need reparations, because of that thinking that there's no difference, and also because with having that in place, and that's been in place for some time, and even when it was governmental, it was not judicious, right? When it was solely governmental, it was not judicious across the board. So these are the kinds of things that warrant the reparations.
I actually want to simplify it, like dial it back a bit. And this question is for Mike. So just for the simplicity of this argument, right? Black people or people of color make up 14% of the population. So for me, if systemic racism doesn't exist, then we should have similar or close to equal representation. That is in terms of financial wealth. That should also, so in other words, we should have close to or 14% representation in healthcare, in politics, and economics. And there's a huge, I don't know if you got to watch the last show, but we actually talked about the disparities in healthcare. So if systemic racism doesn't exist, shouldn't we have closer numbers in terms of representation in all these pillars of society?
Well, you mentioned financial earlier, and I think that in the last episode you mentioned venture capital investments. I don't think that you can look at the total dollars that are going into an investment. I think that you have to look at maybe where most of the opportunities are going, which is in the smaller businesses to get things going. If you have a large corporation that's already are proven business leaders and they're asking for $1 million, that's a lot different than having 10 small business owners that are asking for $10,000 each. So if you look at the numbers, then you would think that there's more opportunity, more to be given to the I hate to say this, the people of color, so to speak. And, there's a number of issues that you guys are jumping on. It's kind of hard to follow. And unfortunately, I keep going in and out of the conversation, so I'm not hearing everything that's said. But if you really want to address opportunities, why not open up the vouchers and have give everybody a chance to go to public schools? I am of the belief that the private sector does it better than the public sector. Now, Kimberly, earlier you were talking about the racial disparity in the prisons. Okay, well, what has been one of the biggest cause of that? Who was in charge when the 1994 bill was passed? That was Bill Clinton, and you know what? Biden was there also. So you got to go back to look at the Democrats.
Does it matter? I don't know that it matters
who passed those bills.
It's not a partisan issue.
What we're saying is that in 2020, we recognize this as an issue, regardless of who passed the bill or not. It's an issue that needs to be corrected. I don't think it matters who did it. It matters how we get out of it. And it matters that we recognize it's an issue and that we want to come together as a people and say, hey, we have to correct this. I don't care if it was Bill Clinton, Abe Lincoln, Ronald Reagan, George Bush. This is where we're at in 2020, and we've got to do better. We've got to change these laws.
Yeah, I don't think this is a case of a partisan issue. I mean, there are certain leanings either way, right? I mean, you may be able to draw a line, but it's not a partisan
very
issue.
Different than what you were saying the last time. The last time you were saying something completely different.
Mike, what we're saying is that it's not a partisan issue. At the risk of casting an even bigger umbrella, this is more about a human rights issue, is what we're saying. So this and righting wrongs. When they say human rights, it's about emphasis on the rights, righting wrongs that were incurred by Black people in this country. So I don't think it doesn't really matter whether it was Democrats or Republicans that furthered the disadvantage of certain people. I think what would really add clarity to the conversation is: are you saying that reparations is not feasible or it's not warranted? Because there's a distinction between the two. Do you believe that it's warranted? Do you think there should be reparations, but it's not feasible?
You're gonna have to ask that. Oh, he's back. Hold on. You may have to ask Mike that question. Mike, did you hear Sean's question?
No, not at all. But I got to tell you, if I keep going, if I keep losing the connection or getting disconnected, this isn't going to work. We're going to have to figure something out where maybe we test in advance. I honestly don't know why this is not happening because I keep on clicking the mute, the unmute, the start cam, and I don't know why it's not. But
Like we can hear you clearly now. If you would just stop, if you're on your cell phone, just stop moving it. Just leave everything the way it is now. Everything's perfect. Yeah. Just don't click anything. Just stop. We're good.
Well,
the question, the question, Mike, was, is in your eyes, is it a question of it's not feasible or reparations is not warranted? I want to get away from the other ancillary issues, but on reparations itself, is it to you, is it just not warranted or not feasible? Meaning enacting it is too much of a cluster.
Both. It's not
Both.
it's not an or situation. Yeah. You know,
so it's not feasible and it's not warranted.
Let's just say that's correct. Let's just say, for example, that we both believe it's warranted. Let's just take that off the table. Tell me how you're going to do it. My family came over in turn of the century, around 1900. We were here well after the Civil War, as were many of the blacks that arrived in the country. And so how do you go back and trace everybody? And I just don't see it. I don't see how in the world you can make it equitable.
Well, here's my answer to you. I think we have to approach it in stages. It requires digesting whether it's warranted or not. And that will really determine whether you go forward. To me, it is warranted. And I don't think there can be a sensible argument as to why it's not warranted. I want to call attention to the fact that when you first started the conversation, you encapsulated the whole conversation around slavery. But this is in regards to a much bigger, a much larger scope than just slavery, just accounting for the genocide of slavery. It's really accounting for what happened in stealing black people and bringing them here. It's also in terms of the what happened in the prison system, as what you said, how that prison system started and how it took advantage of black people. In terms of Jim Crow, in terms of fair housing, or unfair housing before the Fair Housing Act was put in place. How black people were the only people that needed for there to be an act to enforce laws that were already in place. Things like the Civil Rights Act, that was just enforcing laws that were already in place. And all of these tie back to financial benefit to the country. So here's a funny thing is, I don't take this personally, but many people cannot help but take it personally. But I feel as though white people tend to take the conversation around reparations personally. When the thing is, the payout may be racial, but the recipients may be along racial lines, but the payout is not racial. Because guess what? If the government is on the hook for paying those reparations, it is going to be paid by me too. And I'm clearly black. So I'm arguing for reparations to be paid, and also arguing that I want to pay into that, pay out to families of those who were on the sharp edge of this country's advancement. You said your family came here in early 1900s, but there's no way your family did not face the same obstacles as another family that was here for generations in this country, black family that was here for generations. Your white family coming here was in a much better position than a 10th generation black family that was here, already here. So, I think really the question is how do you argue against it not being warranted before we even get into it being feasible?
Mike, are you there?
I think,
We lost Mike?
I think there's connection issues.
Yeah, so
I just want to touch on something also, and just for those listening, and I was going to bring this up to Mike, but he's not here and maybe going in and out. But in a comment that Mike made, he had also stated about opportunity zones, right, that are in place, that were put in place by Trump. Opportunity zones where investment into low-income neighborhoods, as showing where the country is doing as much as it can to help low-income areas and disenfranchised people, things like that. But my issue, and we can talk here. My issue with things like that is creating opportunities doesn't really satisfy the need to right those wrongs. In fact, programs that like mentoring, they tend to push that narrative that there's a lack of knowledge or aptitude or drive within these communities, which is why they are in low income, or they're not at a more favorable position in their life. And I have to push back against that narrative, because those are not the reasons. We're not addressing the blight. We're not addressing food deserts. We're not addressing the fact that healthcare is putting a lot of these people under. We're not addressing their predatory police practices that are in place. So all of these things are the main issues. But when you hear people coming back and saying, well, the country is doing things to help people in these neighborhoods and whatnot, it's almost like it's coming from a very condescending vantage point, because you're saying that, well, we're trying to help you, but you don't want to help yourself. Well, excuse me, you kiss my ass.
I kind of want to go back and address, in some respects, I agree with Mike in that when certain businesses are run privately, they're run more efficiently. But therein lies the problem when we're talking about prisons.
We're not looking for efficiency.
because I mean, when you look at the prison system that is privatized, then they're going to run it more efficiently to gain more profit. And so what that means is they shake down the neighborhoods where Black and brown people don't have as much of a voice to complain to their Congress people or elected officials to basically stand behind them. So it's interesting, because I agree with the point. They're running it efficiently, but they're targeting, the minorities. So
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say, let me paint the picture. If we have in a private situation, if you have a private prison that's able to check in 50 prisoners quickly, because they've gotten rid of the bureaucracy, they've gotten rid of the excessive paperwork, they've developed, whether it's digital or whatever, they've created a very efficient process, right? That's great. Right, but then you have a governmental prison, a federal prison that takes in 5 prisoners, right? Can bring in 5 prisoners at the same rate it takes a private prison bring in 50. Is that a good thing? Is that what we're looking for? We're looking for a faster funnel of prisoners. Is that what we're looking for? That's not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a more
just.
I'm sorry.
A more just system.
A just system, exactly.
Yeah. Listen, I'm all for capitalism. I do think, there's great benefits to it. I think American corporations are phenomenal. There are certain things that should not be for profit and privatized. And this is definitely an area. And Shauna, I'm loving everything you guys are saying tonight. I wish we didn't lose him, because I think like the points that you're making right now are so good. And I think I can't speak for Mike, because I don't know the mind. I don't understand the mindset, but I do think that when people hear the word reparations, they think money They think, why do I have to pay for something I didn't even do? And I just keep coming back to, we pay corporate welfare every day. You look at major corporations in this country making billions of dollars, the Walmarts, and not to name names, but I mean, there are billion-dollar corporations making a ton of money, getting tax breaks and getting by on paying their employees minimum wage. And then those employees need food stamps. They need extra assistance. They need affordable housing, right? That's my tax dollars. Why are we okay to say, I'm willing to pay my tax dollars towards making these corporations even richer, but I'm not okay with those tax dollars going to lift up a generation or possibly two to get them on equal footing because we've suppressed them for so long?
Maybe you guys
we're okay spending our tax dollars to benefit billionaires and billion-dollar corporations, but we're not okay benefiting our neighbors, our friends.
I think we need to take back control. You know, and I know there's some states that are doing this, some cities within some states that are doing this, where they have their citizens basically dictate a certain percentage of how a certain percentage of your tax dollars are spent. So, and I may have shared with you both before, but for example, I live in the city of Parkland. You're driving through the city of Parkland, Kimmy, you don't live here. I want for the citizens of this city to not care. If you have a busted taillight, you're pulled over not by a police with finger on trigger, but you're pulled over by a city employee. They fix your busted taillight and you go on to wherever you're going. Okay, you're safe. Others around you are safe. And I get to dictate that that's where my tax dollars go. Okay, so, and your city reciprocates if I'm driving through your city and I have the busted tail. So I think we need to hone this whole argument in. But you know, like I shared with Mike, I think it's simple. Where there's way too much of a disparity when it comes to wealth, education, healthcare, you name it, to really look at me and tell me that systemic racism doesn't exist. Maybe your interpretation of systemic racism is different than mine, but to me, just looking at the whole picture, it absolutely.
Oh, I don't know how anyone is denying that in 2020 with gerrymandering, with what's happening around voting districts, what's happening around voter suppression. I mean, this is all rooted in continuing to suppress an entire population of people of color. It's just, I don't know how that's deniable at this point. Now you can say, I don't care. You can say, I don't want it to change. I'm good with that.
I'd rather somebody tell me that they don't care than have my white friends, colleagues, actually tell people of color that it doesn't exist when they're not the ones affected by it. Me saying, yeah, go ahead, Sean.
No, you can finish. Go ahead.
No, me suggesting that systemic racism exists doesn't mean that my white counterpart doesn't struggle. It doesn't mean that my white counterpart doesn't have issues and roadblocks. I'm just trying to explain that there are different rules in the judicial system, in the workforce, in the educational system for Blacks versus whites.
Yeah. You know, this conversation, someone listening to this conversation can quickly come to the conclusion that, oh, they're scattered. They're not sticking with the topic. The topic is reparations, but that nothing could be further from the truth. And I want to illustrate why talking about racism is part of the bones, part of the structure that the whole conversation around reparations is about. Because if you ask someone which came first, whether it's racism or slavery, they'd be hard pressed. They'd actually have to think about that and really come up with really think about which one came first. But the fact is that slavery that came first, and then racism, the way of looking at another race, specifically Black people, as subhuman, as savages. That whole view of Black people was started as a way to legitimize the practice of slavery. So when we talk about racism and its effects and its intonations all throughout history, and the effects it's having right now, even up to the debate, because we just had a vice presidential debate yesterday. Even in the middle of that debate, the elephant in the room, right? Even then, it all stems from the need to create a racial divide, a racist divide, and that leads to the whole need for reparations to be had. That's not saying that reparations is going to cure that. That's saying that, okay, we're, for this country alone, because this is not a global conversation, you know, they have to work everywhere else, they got to work out their own issues, right?
Yeah.
This country alone, there has to be a reckoning with this this nasty history that we have. And if there is that reckoning, then we won't have these kind of differing opinions. Or maybe I should rephrase that. There won't be such vehement opposition to reparations, because at least we can now establish that there is cause. There is that history. It's not a matter of, you won't hear people coming up and saying, well, my family came here from right after the Civil War, and we pulled ourselves our bootstraps. We came as immigrants. My father came here with $10, and trying to balance that with a Black family that's been here for generations, but still is stuck in poverty. There's a reason for that, and that has nothing to do with a lack of drive. It has everything to do with systemic issues that are in place, has everything to do with racism, has everything to do with the fact that the country has not faced its ugly self in the mirror, has everything to do with why kids go through school, whether it's primary, elementary, high school, community college, graduate school, without even broaching the subject of this nastiness that's in our veins in this country. No, that we don't, there's no reckoning. You have to actually do your research on your own. When my kids, when they were in school, the only thing they learn about Black people is that they were slaves, and then we evolved from there. It's almost like the Black people came out the womb as slaves.
Yeah, we need to reshape that narrative. Black people
all of that permeates into the way we look at each other. All that permeates into the way their bank manager looks at you. It all permeates into the way that police officer looks at you. Has everything to do with the person that you might be interested in, or someone that romantically might be interested in, and the ramifications of you guys engaging in a relationship and what that's going to mean. Oh, we got to think about the kids. Maybe this is not the best way to go. All of these have effects, and they're disgusting. So money is not going to fix that, but it will be a step towards that.
Yeah, we definitely have to change that narrative. A friend of mine had posted something, and I started to research this woman, Mary Seacole. I never heard about her before. A Jamaican woman. She was biracial. She was born a free woman, so was her mother, who had a hotel in Jamaica. But it wasn't just a hotel. People who were sick would come to this hotel, and they would use natural herbs to basically cure the ailments. Long story short, she gets married to a white man. He dies. She gets on a ship, and this is in the 1800s, and she goes to England. And Florence Nightingale, who everybody is taught about in school, knows who Florence Nightingale is. And I would beg to challenge that this woman had more of an impact than Florence Nightingale, but you never hear of her, right? She attempts to join Florence Nightingale. She shoos her off because she's Black. So now Mary Seacole goes to the front line and took care of dying soldiers to the point where she is she's the most notorious to date. So every school child in Britain learns about Mary C. Cole. There was a portrait, or there is a portrait of her that now it somehow mysteriously disappeared. It's now resurfaced, and it sits in their National Museum right across from Florence Nightingale. Okay. And so we need to your point, Sean, we need to change the narrative. We were not born into slavery. We were not born as slaves. We were born as kings and queens. Probably had things just a little bit too easy. Hence the
no. The climate, yeah. No one had an easy life back then.
No, the point I'm making,
times.
Hear me out. The point I'm making is living closer to the equator, where you basically go and pick fruit off the tree and don't have to activate additional brain cells to figure out how to stay alive living up in the Antarctic. You're not 10 steps ahead of your counterpart. Hence Europeans being able, now don't get me wrong, there were sellouts, Black people, hence slavery couldn't happen. But the point is, the Europeans who took Blacks into slavery were thinking and 10 steps ahead. So when I said maybe have life too easy, meaning not necessarily activating all the brain cells at the time, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to overcome at the end of the day. I mean, I'm talking generally.
No, I think to your point, any people that have been, genocide or these Holocausts, right? I mean, we're seeing it today in Yemen, and there's things happening with Armenians. It's always peaceful. No one is looking to, they're peaceful people living beautiful lives in beautiful lands. And you can't even imagine somebody coming in and just saying, I'm going to take you out of your home. I'm going to rip you away from your mother and your siblings. I'm going to put you in a life for the next hundreds of years of torture. And then think in 2 generations, they should just get over it. I 3 generations, right? And Sean, I think you tried to voice this, that it didn't end with the emancipation. I mean, it continued on. I don't think we've talked on this show yet about like Black Wall Street. I think that's a great topic that we should bring about, because, it completely wiped out the ability for each generation to do better than the next. When you're continuously just ripping things away, right? Yes, Mike mentioned schools and just go to a better school. And it's like, well, how about a couple generations ago, had that person been able to get a loan, start a business, move into that nicer neighborhood, his child would have been in a nicer area with a better school, right? And then their children do, right? And so we've ripped that away for generations. And you're right, Shauna, it was, nobody asked for that, right? They're living these peaceful lives. And I don't understand how people aren't connecting that.
Well, and the whole the whole notion of reparations has been put in practice already. It has been it has been done elsewhere. I mean, this is not a new concept. But in every iteration of reparations, there's been a recognition, so an apology, making concessions, saying that an acknowledgement, I should say, acknowledgement of what took place, right? And then there's also an award, financial, another one, an award for those that were on the receiving end of those atrocities, and then you had the promise to never repeat what took place, right? We've never gone through those 3 stages, right?
There were 5. Remember, Sean, you taught me and we learned?
Yeah.
Financial, restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and then the guarantee of non-repetition.
Yeah. I'm summarizing when I say 3, but
no, but I love that. That stuck with me.
Yeah, and we haven't done that. We haven't come to that acknowledgement, and that's to show you, because it's that powerful. It's I think it was Clinton that made that apology, right? And he formally apologized and whatnot, but it didn't get the coverage that it should have gotten. And what was a follow up? There's no follow up. The kids are still taught ridiculous history. It's not. We're still debating on TV, on CNN and any other network about whether we should tear down Confederate soldiers and Confederate generals, their statues. We're really having that conversation in 2020, and we're having that is because there's no context. We're not providing proper context to people. So they think that, you're erasing history. Well, dummy, then if that's the case, then we should erect a statue to Charles Manson, right? He was a major figure in crime that took place in the 60s and 70s. Major figure, right? Why don't we have a statue to him? Because he was committing atrocities. That's why. So, with all due respect to the legacy of General Lee and all these other generals, they may have been good men otherwise, but they were protecting an institution that was dehumanizing other humans, right? So why do we praise that? Why we haven't even having that discussion? It's an affront to decency. But
I think there was a breakthrough. I read something briefly in California regarding reparations. So I think there, we're starting to see some breakthrough. It definitely is a long road, but I think more are engaging in these types of discussions, and even in the political arena, it's part of their conversation now. So there's definite headway. So I think it's useful that we continue these types of engagement. And we have about 8 minutes left, but I wanted to just ask you guys, what do y'all think about the debate last night?
I'll let you guys go.
So it's interesting because you can see I'm not capable of having a conversation without getting a little heated. And I wanted Kamala to go after him and hard and just put him in his place left and right, call him out on all his nonsense, because I do believe he is a very dangerous person, Pence, under his faith and all of that, and that calm demeanor. I think he is calculating. I think, him and the leaders of that party are kind of puppet mastering Trump along and doing some horrific things in the federal court systems with the judges and whatnot for a long-term plan. So I felt like when he kept pushing on, are you going to pack the court? Are you going to pack the court? You're not answering the question. I wanted her to push back. She started to say, you want to talk about packing the courts, but she didn't go far enough. She said, she should have said, what have you done the last 4 years? You've packed the courts. Why are you trying to rush a Supreme Court justice in 20 some days? Because you want to pack the Supreme Court.
Right.
I wanted her to push back. And then when he refused to answer if he was going to agree to a peaceful transition of power, he didn't answer that. And yet she didn't go back at him and say, oh, so you cannot answer questions, but I'm not allowed to show my cards on what we plan to do in the Senate. So I think she missed some moments, but then watching the commentary afterward, they say, as a woman, you have to be careful how you're perceived if you're too brash, because when Trump does it, he's, this big tough guy. When a female does it, she's a bitch.
Not just a female, but a black female.
Right. So then it goes a step further.
Right.
And I had to pause and say to myself, you know what? It's true, because I know that my communication style is not so effective. I get heated, I yell, I fight, and then the other person maybe tunes out, turns it off. So maybe it was more effective the way that she did keep her poise and stay extremely professional. I thought she was calm. I just, my style is more like get him.
Yeah, she gets an A+++ in my book because while I was watching it, those same instincts for me kicked in. I was like, oh my gosh, you could have stung harder here or punched harder there. But I really thought about it. And, you know, Black women are the most disrespected, most underrated, I mean, you have to, it's like walking a tightrope with no safety net underneath. What you say, how you do it. I'm not saying it's fair, it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately it is that way. So I loved the fact that she kept her cool. I love the fact that even when the moderator was trying to move her along to a question, if she felt it was important to go back and address something, she did that. Yeah. And I really love and respect that she didn't answer his question, because he's not the
moderator.
He's not the blinkety blank moderator. No, I didn't answer any of his questions, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I thought she handled herself very well, because the thing is, you have the fight today, but you also have tomorrow to think about when you're in power and when you're dealing with other world leaders. And unfortunately, they judge women. And when I say they, I mean men and women alike. I mean Black and white people alike. I mean everybody.
Yeah.
Judges a Black woman. They hold them to a different standard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
John.
I've not the most popular opinion, but I think Pence won the debate. And the reason I say that is because Kamala Harris didn't do anything to win new people. I didn't see that. I didn't see her appealing to a new subset of people that weren't going to vote for her anyway. You guys are women, and at the risk of generalizing, I think you'd be voting for her anyway, right? Or because she's on the ticket. I'm not saying just because she's a woman, but I think it'd be fair to say that you'd be voting for her, right? And the woman vote is not what the Democrats are lacking right now. What they're lacking is white men, to be quite frank, right? And sorry?
And white women.
So white women, white women are voting more for the Democrats than Republicans, right? The Democrats have to get a popular vote. Republicans don't need the popular vote, but they do need the Democrats do need white men to go over the edge, right? To win this election. And why I say Pence won is because he was able to frame that extreme conservative, that far right views that he has, and frame it as though it's normal. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
it's a rational approach. He was very even-tempered, level-headed. The way his evasiveness, listen, he's full of shit, right?
He's so deceitful.
But it is what it is. Who did it speak
to? And it plays well.
It plays well because we're not fighting over truths anymore. Listen, Trump was elected in 2016. This is 4 years after. I do not engage anymore with people than trying to explain to them how Trump is a garbage peddler. That's a futile exercise. If they don't see that yet, I am not that brilliant to bring them over to my side. They're not going to see it because they've chosen to dwell in those depths. All right. So the fact that Pence can bring it and make it seem like this is a normal approach. This may not be yours, but it's a normal approach. Makes him more human, makes those views more human. Harris?
John, I'm sorry. I have to disagree with you wholeheartedly. I think Senator Harris won the debate. I think the fly came in second. And I think that eventually, and then I think he lost. I'm sorry. It's time to sign off.
All right. Okay. I'm sorry to everyone that's watching. If you had the patience to stay with us during this show, we apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning. When we repost, we're gonna have to edit a lot of that junk out. But we are thankful that you stuck with us and that you find anything we said remotely interesting. So thank you.
All right. Thank you guys. Leave us comments on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. See you next time. See you in 2 weeks.
Make a plan to vote.
Yeah.
Have a plan.
Indeed.
Yes.
All right.
Bye-bye. Good night.